I am excited for our guest today. This is going to be a fun conversation. And when Molly showed up, she has this amazing setup. You'll see it in the video later when we release clips. I mean, she's a professional, Molly McCook, actor, storyteller. Thank you for your time. It's really nice to meet you and have a fun conversation. I'm excited.
Oh, you too. Thanks for having me. It was an excuse to get all moody and fancy with my candle and my microphone.
I know it's a vibe all the way around, but it doesn't surprise me because you're very talented and you're a creative.
Thank you.
And I mean, you've been in the business for a while, and you mentioned before that your husband is a musician. So you're a very creative, artistic family, which I think is cool. I want to ask just right out of the gate with that, having two people who are creatives, like, is it just a constant session of bouncing ideas, whether it's auditions for you or music
Mm,
for him, do you guys kind of keep it separate?
I mean, he's an actor as well, so it is very nice because we do have like live-in audition scene partners, which like I'll tell you at first when pandemic hit and it was like self-tape world, it was like not the best at first, but we've hit our stride. We've figured out our ways of doing it, but it's not the best sometimes because you're like we're a little too close. We know each other a little too well, but we've figured it out. It's like it's a very nice, but I can't say that we're like walking around all the time singing songs and bouncing off ideas. I wish. I mean, there are a lot of ideas that we then forget about in 2 hours and it's like they never happened, but it's a creative household for sure.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, I was just interviewing Jason Ritter a couple days ago. Not to name
Oh.
drop, but he's
Well, I know Jason. I know the Ritter family. My family knows the Ritter family.
yeah, that's very cool. Well, we were just talking at the end of our conversation about how he's married to Melanie and
Yeah.
sort of they're in a season now where she's working a lot and they're traveling with their family. But
Yeah.
I asked him, I find it curious because she's obviously an actor too. And, there's constantly self-tape auditions. And he said that he finds himself in situations because he's so enamored with her just as a person, but also as an actor. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Do you have any ideas for this?" Especially when it's a character or something that's
Yeah.
been presented to him, where
Yeah.
he's like the lead of a show. So I think I would imagine, because I've had a lot of couples on the show that do it together, and I like to know because I wonder what a day in the life is like with you have two massively creative people sharing space all the time. And I think people do find it fascinating.
Totally. I mean, yeah, it's especially nice when you think that your partner is like the most talented and you respect their ideas. I mean, like, yeah, you can't get anything better. So, yeah, we're very lucky in that regard, truly, because I really am like, what do you think? Tell me what to do because I trust you. That's nice.
I love it. So interestingly enough, this last year has been crazy with like the strike happening and then just coming off of a pandemic where everybody
Yeah.
was out of work. I'm interested to know, just for you as an artist, was it an opportunity for you to really to hone your craft and maybe work on things that you might not normally have had time to work on? Or how did you spend your time during that period, this last year when things slowed down a lot for the industry and people were just kind of at home,
Yeah.
figuring out ways to maintain their creativity otherwise when they weren't either able to do press and talk about projects? Or I guess my question would be, like, what are some other creative outlets that you were able to focus on that you wouldn't have normally worked on, if any at all? I think people find that
Yeah.
fascinating.
Totally. I mean, it was hard. It was definitely like a bizarre kind of time. I mean, truthfully, I spent my a lot of my time on the picket lines and I found that it was I had never been a part of something that was mine, that was my union. So I not that that's necessarily creative, but I found myself connecting with a lot of fellow actors and writers when those strikes were happening. So that was something that kept me very busy, honestly. A lot of talks with friends and a lot of ideas. We two of our best friends, we decided to like start picking plays and we just went over and we read through a four-person play together, just like cold reading, which was really fun and creative. I started, and I don't want to make this a thing because I'm not a writer and I'm not necessarily like have big plans for anything, but I just sat down and I started to write. And something that gave me a purpose. I got to like sit down at my desk and get creative and throw out ideas. And because it was so new to me, I was reading about how to structure scripts and plot lines and characters and reading books about it. And so that's been great. And I've been getting a lot of reading done, which I love. And sometimes I don't have the time to do. So those were all my things. But I mean, yeah, the writing thing was something I never thought that I would do. And because I had the time and space to do it, I was like, okay, let's just see what this is about. And it's been fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of writers, what I have found is either they really love it or it's a love-hate kind of relationship because it can be so arduous sometimes. But I love hearing that because it's cool. Because it's like, well, if you can't do this or that, well, it's a chance to maybe throw ideas on paper and
Yeah.
see where it takes you. Who knows? Maybe a Mandy and Kyle spinoff. Who knows? I
Oh my gosh.
mean,
I can't say that the two of us haven't sat down and talked about that. That's who Christoph Sanders is, one of my best friends, and he's who one of the people we sat down with and read that play through with. Yeah, I mean, everyone's trying. I think that now is the most creative time that we've ever experienced as creatives and actors and writers. I think that everybody I don't know, because of the outlets, I think that everybody is having fun, exciting ideas and going, and because of the time, we're going like, what can we do with this? And one of the other things that I did that I just remembered is that I've started to sit down my parents, and they have such interesting stories about their years acting and auditioning and on sets and in theaters. And I sat them down and I started recording and I started like transcribing that to possibly write. But even if it's just a book for my family in the future to have all those stories written down, like that's fine if nothing comes of it. It's just that, you know, they have these unbelievable stories as artists. And I'm like, I'm so used to hearing them. I'm like, yeah, yeah, dad, I've heard that story. Yeah, mom, I know. But then my friends are like, wait, what happened? Who did they know? They were what? You know? So yeah, it's definitely given me space to explore, which is cool.
I love that. So growing up, I was going to talk about this, but we'll just segue to that because you mentioned it. So you grew up with parents who were creatives and artists, storytellers. So for you, because I know you have a pretty hefty theater background, which I think is so cool, but this was just a natural progression for you. Did you have interest in it right away, watching them work and things like that? Or was it a slow burn process for you to really
Yeah.
dive into the industry? You're
No, it
laughing.
was I'm laughing because I love when people are like, "Yeah, it was a slow burn." Like, when I was an adult, I figured no, I was like the most hammy kid you could ever imagine. I was like the baby. I was, uh, on my dad's soap set and, completely enthralled with, like, the idea of being in front of the camera. And then also, he's an incredible pianist and has all this knowledge of musicals and theater. And, because of his piano playing, he was always like accompanying me when I sang in the talent shows. And so music was really what first got me into performing. I just loved singing and I loved being on stage. And then it blossomed into acting as well. And yeah, I always loved being around it. I think my parents were very scared of that because it was very clear that I was destined to want to do this, and no one could tell me no. So, yeah, it was pretty immediate.
I love that. I mean, what a safe space too that it had to create for you just as a person to
Totally.
be able to really be a part of something different than what most people probably choose to do when they're that young. I don't know.
Right.
I don't I think for me too, not necessarily the film and television part, but definitely it makes sense why I do this because like I was interviewing neighbors, I was interviewing kids.
Yeah.
We would do radio DJ programs and things like that. And it was just kind of fun. So naturally, I think, and not that my parents were ever into any of that, but they certainly encouraged it. So that's cool that parents were just right there with you beside you the entire time. And
Yeah,
that, I
very
mean, that
lucky.
probably made it easier in some ways in dealing with some of the challenges that you might have faced as you have worked your way through the industry and tried different things. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely helped. I mean, my gosh, just in terms of having yeah, a supportive family and household. What's ironic about that is the industry has changed so much. So even by the time that I started auditioning, um, I think that I was teaching them a lot too. I think it was a lot of like, okay, this is not what I remember. You know, my mom was under contract at Universal. And that was a world and a time where things were much simpler, you know, where people kind of signed on and then they worked a bunch in that time and under those people and projects. And so there was a lot of learning on both sides for sure. But with that said, the advice that they gave me was so, so valuable. And still till this day, I take a lot of that with me. And I think, you know, actors are still actors and producers and all those things still exist. And sets and the way things are made for the most part at the root of it are the same. And so, um, I think just that understanding was really important. I have most of my friends don't have parents that were in the industry or artists. And so I definitely, like, as I've gotten older, seen how special it is and how lucky I have been to just have parents that understand and just love it and know why I love it and know why I strive for it. You know, I think that there's like a middle ground there that a lot of people, like, their parents are like, "You I'm sorry, you wanna do what?
Right.
You wanna audition for a living?" You know? So yeah, no, I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, they get it. You know what I'm saying? Like you said something interesting about the idea where sometimes parents are like, "You're crazy for wanting to do this," packing up yourself and moving to Hollywood or whatever.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
to LA and just going for it and just
Yeah.
making it work. Like, did you have a plan B or was it just plan A the entire way?
Oh my gosh, I mean, that's funny. No, not really. I mean, I think after high school, I definitely was like, "Okay, am I gonna go to New York and study theater?" Study musical theater, for 4 years, and I did. I mean, I did look into schools and I looked into that, but I was so very ready. I hadn't worked a lot because I didn't get, like, a lot of work as a teenager because I was so tall, and I don't think I looked my age at that time, so, um but I had started and I wanted to work, and, most of the schools that I looked at didn't allow me to work and be in school. I would have to, like, stop and go away for 4 years, and I think that that's so admirable, the people that do it, but I was ready. So yeah, so that was just my other path that I could have gone down, which but it would have been a totally different thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Like, again, just kind of thinking about what you do. And that's why I love talking to great people like yourself who do this for a living because it's so different. I feel like I've learned so much just having conversations because everybody's experience is so different,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
Like, it's not the way that your path went or your husband's perhaps or anybody else that you are friends
yeah,
with in the business. So different. But in a way now though, because you have had measurable success, at least I feel like, and I think people would agree, it probably is like, man, I'm so glad I did it the way that I did and wouldn't have done it any other way, right? Because I mean, who
yeah, well,
knows?
you don't know. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, this was my path and I'm here and here we go. That's
Yeah,
good.
I
I don't
love
know.
it.
I don't know how else it would have gone, but it's possible I would have ended up right here, you know? Who knows? But, that's not how life works, so
Yeah, it certainly doesn't, right? Because you just do not know. But I find it just so fascinating. I was just looking at your filmography and all the things that you've done, interesting projects you've picked out and you've been a part of. I'm interested to know though, like, because of what you've done and all of the things that you've been a part of, what is important for you as an actor or a storyteller, whether you're getting an offer or you're going out to choose or to audition for something, like what's important to you at this point in your career? Maybe you started out early on just young and hungry and wanting to work as much as you can. And now are there things that you've learned along the way that are important to you as a storyteller?
mm. Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I haven't had that much room to be picky these years, you know? I I've been lucky in that the projects that I've worked on have varied and have been so different from one to the other. And now I think I just look at things that make me feel good. You know what I mean? Things that excite me. Um, I think it's as simple as that. the projects that I get to audition for, of course, there are some that, like, are more exciting than others. But I think it's mostly just how it makes me feel. If it feels good in my body, if the words feel good on the page, if the people I see are working on it excite me and I hear good things about them, I just want to work. And right now in my career, I came off of a sitcom that I was lucky enough to be on for 3 years, and that was like a dream come true. And uh I think right now my life and my plan is just to look at things and kind of say yes unless I have some horrible feeling or something. I don't agree with something, but for the most part, it's like say yes and see what the experience is like, because that's what it's about. We don't know what it's going to be like on paper. We don't know how it's going to pan out and we don't know how long it's going to last. So we don't know if the people are going to be nice, you know what I mean? So it's kind of just like, okay, I think this excites me. Yes, let's do this. And then hope that it's a good experience that I can look back on and be like, wow, thank God I did that. And sometimes they're not great, and that's okay too. But I've been pretty lucky, and some have been more exciting and collaborative than others, and those are the ones that I'm like, "Oh yeah, I really like this energy. I like having a say. I like being able to bounce off ideas and having the director and producers and people care about my opinion and my ideas for the character." So that's just like an extra bonus. But again, you don't really know that until you're there.
Yeah, well, speaking of, Last Man was always a favorite in our house. I mean, I'm starting to rewatch it now with my 9-year-old. He thinks the show is
Cute.
hilarious.
Great.
Yeah, it's just
Can't
such a
go
good
wrong.
show. Yeah, you cannot. So that was an interesting time because the show was on and then it went off again, and then there was the cast change,
Mhm.
and that was a big deal, but the show was able to continue on. I've spoken to other actors before who have come into a show midway where it's a very greased cogged wheel and things are moving and shaking, and they come
Yeah,
in and the cast transition is always fun, it's smooth, they make little jokes about it. I believe they said something funny about you, Mandy,
they
you look a
did,
little
yeah.
bit different.
Uh-huh.
um so how was that experience for you coming into that show and really just, I would imagine, hitting the ground running because it had been going
Totally.
for a while,
Yeah.
and then you get the huge opportunity to take over and be a part of such an amazing show. I think it's still one of the best shows on TV that
Oh,
existed.
thanks.
It's true,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to imagine anything coming close to it. Although it would be fun to see that sort of idea come back on again because it was just such a solid show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Tim Allen is the ultimate sitcom dad. He knows what he's doing. He's so good. And a lot of that, I mean, most of that crew is from Home Improvement days. I mean, those people have all worked together for years and years and years, which is why it's such a well-oiled machine. Um Yeah, I hit the jackpot. Plain and simple. Like I got that audition like any other audition. I knew about the show. I had seen a lot of it. So I had known Amanda Fuller for a long time. She went to high school with my sister. And then Christoph Sanders and I have been friends for over 10 years. I mean, we had known each other. So when I got the audition, I didn't tell him because I'm superstitious, but there's no need to tell or poke or be like, "Put in a good word for me,"
Yeah,
because,
hey,
like
can you say
yeah,
something to
because A, I'm superstitious, and B, like, what are the odds anyway? I'm looking at this and I'm going, "I know who played this part. I'm double her size, height-wise, and my hair is the opposite color, like, there's no way," basically. But I Brett Benner and Debbie Romano, who are the casting directors, I had worked with before. So I kind of thought to myself, okay, they wouldn't waste their own time or waste mine. So there must be some sort of window here, some sort of like possibility that they're going a different direction. And I love working on fun stuff, and it was always a dream of mine to be on a sitcom, and so it was exciting to audition for it. I even as the process went along, which felt like forever, audition after audition, and then into the testing process, I still was like, I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm here in the waiting room with these two girls who looked exactly like this other actress, and I'm like the oddball here. So I was like, kind of like, whatever. Like, it's either going to be like, this is totally out of my control. Like, it's either going to be me or it's not. And so I kind of think it gave me like this room to play. And in the room, they were so like, listen, and they basically were like, listen, we really love you for this, but the network's having a hard time because of how different you look. And they were like, we want this, because they have a camera there, like, we're going to make this the best that we can and try and sell this up. And it wasn't until I was like really testing for it and they called and they were like, we want you to have a chemistry read with Christoph Sanders, that I called him. And I was like, so, and he was like, you're kidding me.
Nice.
And yeah, and then jumping into it was wild. I was terrified, but so excited. Um, I think that's where I benefited from growing up in the industry is like, I'm not saying that I don't get starstruck. I'm like, I can't say that I met Tim Allen and I was like, hey, what's
Yeah.
up? Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, everyone was so excited to be back. I think they were so heartbroken that it got canceled the way that it did without them having any sort of knowledge that it was going to happen. And so everyone was just so jazzed that they got to keep kind of the family the same. And so everyone was really grateful and gracious to me and welcoming, and it just made me feel happy and welcomed. And because of like Amanda and Christoph and knowing them, it was like I could always go to them for anything if I was feeling insecure or anything like that. Um, and it was just a dream. I mean, truly, everybody just loved that job. Everyone loved being there. It was just like a really, really happy environment. And the sitcom schedule is so great. And the hours are just so lovely that no one's there like going like, God, I really got to get home. Like, I really got to do this. So it's like everybody's just happy to be there. And I learned a lot and I got to perform in front of an audience, which is like the marriage between TV and theater, which is why it's my dream. And except for our last season, which is a whole other thing because of the pandemic, which was very sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was scary. It was exciting. It was a dream come true. And I wish I was doing it every week for the rest of my life. We all text each other all the time. Like we miss it a lot. It's really a dream job.
Yeah. Well, it's such a great show. The first round, I was in LA and I had tickets to go see it. And then that's when all of the weird things started
Mm.
happening. And then the show, it's like, oh, we're on a hiatus
Oh, sure.
unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And then yada yada. Well, so cool. I mean, I'm gushing here, but I really do mean it. Like you were so funny on that show.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
just
you.
was watching YouTube clips the other day of you and your friend Krista and just sort
Hmm.
of all of those funny moments that you guys had and just the awkwardness and the fun and just all of it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, such a killer career. I mean, again, just looking at all the things that you've done, I'm interested to know though, like as you have learned about yourself through a lot of these characters that you've played and things that you've done, whether it's reading a play or performing live, like for you, h- I don't necessarily prefer the term validation, but like what solidifies to you, Molly, as far as like just this is what you're meant to be doing? Has there been one project or another that has just kind of cemented that in your mind, or is it just kind of everything that you enjoy and that sort of thing?
Oh gosh, I mean, I would say that the job that I got, Good Trouble right before Last Man Standing, that one was pretty I mean, to take your word, it was validating. It was very much like I came into the first episode of Good Trouble, um, and it was kind of a family because it was the spinoff of The Fosters. So it was like there was a family there, and yet there were all these new characters, and everyone was excited, and we were telling stories that mattered. It
Mm,
was just like I'll tell you, like even just like living in LA, um, the thing that I get recognized the most is for the most is Good Trouble, and people just
that's
love it.
cool.
Yeah, and it's really yeah, we were telling meaningful stories, and I learned a lot on that show. I mean, I did walk and talks. I felt like I was on like the West Wing or something. Like I look back on that footage and I'm like, whoa, that was really, really cool. These like long shots down the hallway and turning quarters and continuing the dialogue. And I would say that was the first time that I was like, yeah, this works. This is happening. I've entered like a different part of my career for sure. I mean, the first episode was directed by John Chu, and I remember uh Crazy Rich Asians hadn't come out yet.
Wow.
And but they had shot it, and I knew he was a big deal, and he was just like the best and so great to work with. But I remember that like one of my first scenes, I just like they gave me so much action to do. Like I was like putting papers and folders and I was doing and I kept messing up my lines and I was just like, I'm so sorry. And I remember like the next day, I remember like emailing him and one of the producers being like, first day jitters, like I'm so embarrassed. I got this. Don't worry. I just was like so mixed up and I finally had figured it out. But I hit my stride with it for sure. But yeah, I think that was the first job that kind of felt like a shift.